Hello everybody, and today I am going to show you building basics on Roblox Studio. A lot of people have been waiting a long time for me to do this, some people even years, and I apologize for taking so long to actually make videos on how to build. This video today is going to be the basics. I'm going to talk about the things in Studio and how to get basically how to get through Studio and what each tool does for the most part, and um talk about the textures and the parts and all that stuff. um I will go more in depth as each video I release comes out, and I will not be fast forwarding through any of this. So if it's going too slow for you, feel free to speed up or skip around. But I want to go through it at a regular pace so that people can learn more from the video. So let's get into it. So if you have never built in Studio before or don't even know how to go to it, I always go to the Create tab. And that takes you to all of your creations, your places, your experiences, models, decals, badges, etc. This is what you'll see a lot if you're a game developer or a clothing developer. And if you have ever created a game or you go or want to start fresh, create new experience, and wait for Studio to launch. Mine often shows this. I always just click ignore. Um, and then you have all these template options. There's the here. This first option is the new base plate. Um, this has some modifications to the lighting and all that. But I will say the base plate itself is very useful if you want to have correct sizes. Excuse me. Here, the second one is the classic base plate. It's literally just a plain base plate, like it says. And then we have flat terrain, which is, I believe, just all smooth terrain grass. Um, some of these themes have scripts in them, but I don't know what all of them do because I haven't taken the time to mess with them. Some of them are to get you started into making a video game or to get you started in a certain type of game. So here we have a village. I don't know if there's any scripting in that. We have a castle. I still don't have no. I still don't know if there's scripting in that. Feel free to check these all out. Obviously, you can always open multiple experiences and check them out. But if you have a low-end computer, make sure to do one at a time because your computer will not be able to handle it. But if you have a good, like, medium to high-end computer, then it should be perfectly fine. But back to what I was saying. We have a castle here. I do not know what that does. I haven't checked it out. A lot of these are new to me, even. Suburban. Um, I have no idea. Racing though, I am pretty sure does have scripting. It gets you started into making a racing game. Pirate Island. I looked at that a long time ago, but I don't remember what all it entails besides what is in this icon here. We have Western. Still don't know what's in that. Other what's an icon, obviously. City. Obby is basically a little starter kit for you to make an obstacle game. And a lot of people like to do that as their first game on Roblox because it's a fairly easy thing to do, and a lot of people like to go and do obbies. So if you want to just make your first ever game that gets people's attention, then have at it if you feel that you can do something like that and make it original to you. Um, Starting place, that's just, I think, the default starting place current day. Like if you were to currently make a place, I believe that's what they start you with now, like a new account. That's what they start with. Mine, my start place has been ages ago, so it was completely different to me. Um, but there's not a whole lot there. It's a little bit of everything, I guess you could say. There's not much for you to use, I would say. Line runner, I think that's something like based on the icon. I think that has something to do like making a game similar to like Sonic or something where you collect coins and all that. Not certain. I haven't checked it out. Capture flag. This will get you started in making a capture the flag game. Um, Last I checked, which was a long time ago, the scripts still work, but I don't know if they still work or if they have updated them ever since the filtering enabled update, which I will get more into later on in this video if you're curious about it. Um, Team or FFA Arena, that gets you started into like if you're on to make a game such as, well, I don't know if that one has scripts per se, but if it is as I'm thinking, I believe it will get you started in a game where you either fight as a team or against each other for free, like free for all. My bad, not for free. In a free for all, you fight against each other. Everybody's on their own, basically. Combat, obviously gets you started in a combat game. You got a gun, a sword, and a med kit. And then Move It Simulator, I have no idea what that is. That is new to me. Same as Mansion of Wonder. Those, I do not know what those are. So, excuse me, sorry. So I would say check those out on your own. See what those are about if they're anything you're interested in. These are just these are themes, so I'm assuming these are just aesthetic. There's not really any scripts to them. And then gameplay just gets you started in a game. Especially if you're a beginner, don't know how to script or anything. But we're gonna start with just a simple base plate. We're gonna do the new base plate too. So I'm gonna open that up. So we have this grid, and this grid is a one stud. Like each cube is one stud, and you have each. So this is each cube I'm referring to. So this is a stud. So this whole section here is a 4x4 stud panel, and this helps if you are building on the ground like this, and um you don't have like any plugins or anything like that. But we'll get more into building later. Anyway, so we have the home tab. You have the basic studio tools. So right here, this is how you insert a part. These parts are by default unanchored. So if you plan to build with the regular studio tools, remember to always anchor your stuff. To anchor, it is this button right here, or you could hit Alt A as it says here. If you do not anchor your stuff, it will either explode. That is one scenario, or it'll fall down to the ground. It depends on what you have done, but I've had both happen. Um, but back to the tools, we have the scale tool that allows you to obviously rescale your stuff. We have the select tool, which allows you to click and drag your part around. We have the move tool, which gives you the arrows to move them. You can move them along Z and Y and all that. Or Z, X, and Y, my bad. And then we have the rotate tool, which they've kind of changed these up since I've last used these. I don't use studio tools anymore because I don't find them as, what's the word? I don't find them as, I can't think of the word. I'm sorry, but they're not my preference. Obviously, use what you have preference to, and I will show you the building tools I use as well, and um maybe you guys will like those better. I personally love using the tools I use. It makes things so much easier than using the studio building tools. Not that the studio building tools are bad, but at any rate, basic shortcuts for this basic studio tools would be Control C, which obviously copies it but doesn't do anything yet. Then Control V, which gives you a part. I will in editing I'll try to put text of what I'm saying the controls are and what they do as I say them, but no promises there because I'm pretty noob at video editing. So sorry. Um, You also have Control D, which is Control Duplicate, and that duplicates the part you have selected in its place, and you can tell it's duplicated because it'll pull up here in your Explorer. If you do not have your Explorer, you go to the View tab, and here on the left side you have Properties and Explorer. You want both of those open. I always have them open all the time because this shows all your parts and everything in your workspace, your lighting and replicated and all that. Excuse me. And I'll go over that more soon here later in the video. Um, excuse me, sorry. Properties, it shows you the properties of a part or whatever you have selected in your workspace. So you can change brick color here. Hold on, let me move this. So you have the duplicated parts. I duplicated twice. Thing with the doing Control D is that you might accidentally copy and paste multiple parts in one section and not realize it while you're building. Because I personally, I don't sit here and stare at my Explorer when I'm building. I'm going to be looking at my build. So, I believe I don't know if they still have it, but if I remember correctly, there's also like a little sound to the duplicate, so it might make a little duplicate sound. But I haven't had my sound on it for Studio in years, so I couldn't tell you if they still have it. But I know they used to. But back to what I was saying about properties. Sorry, I'm gonna probably get sidetracked a lot in this because there is a lot to cover. But here we have brick color, which you can change with this little hexagon grid. This gives you a lot more options, and if this isn't enough for you, if you want a very specific color, go to more colors. This is highly recommended if you want like different shades of something and to like make your game more vibrant. Sure, there might be a lot of colors here, but even if you use just these, like it can seem not as realistic and all that. It's some of these can do, but it's custom colors are often preferred for most people that develop, and you can adjust the shade here And this is your saturation. Higher you go, the more saturated the color you go. So you got nice saturated red here, and if you want to be less saturated, you just go further down, but it also will make your color brighter. And you can just slide it down. So if you want a dark, not saturated green, you'd slide down to the bottom of the green there, and there you go. You can also adjust based on like hex code. Like I believe right here, this is a hex code, and um, if I do not know why that popped up, sorry. If you don't know hex codes, if that's what you want to do, yeah, hex HTML color codes. You can go to like a website, and if you want like a specific hex code, you can, pull it off of a website, or you could go to images and you can find hex codes off of there. I personally don't do that. Another thing you can do too is pick screen color. So you can pick colors off of stuff in Studio, even out of Studio. Um you can go to something else uh like over here. I can go over the Vans World, and it's selecting the red from that. And that is useful because if you pull up an image of, I don't know, a husky or something, and you want to get the exact color of his fur, you would just pick screen color, and you can pick any color off of the husky. So you can pick the blue from his eyes, and you'd have that color. That is useful if you want to build in realism, especially. Or like you want a specific landscape or whatever. But moving on, we also have right here RGB, red, green, blue, and you can change these numbers to like 100 each. I find these to be like the absolute, like if you go by tens, I find these to be like the absolute gray. Personally, it looks to me that way. It might be a little bit on the blue side, but they're the closest to absolute gray that you can probably get. I like to build in like, when I'm building with grays and blacks, I like to do like 60 60 60 across the board. And you don't have to open the menu to do this. You can go to here and type 60 comma 60 comma 60, hit enter. I accidentally missed a 6, my bad. You can type 60 comma 60 comma 60, and you get this color right here, or 50 comma 50 comma 50, and you have this color. You have to put the commas because it doesn't like it if you don't put the commas. Yeah, I typed 40 40 40 without commas, and it doesn't do anything. So you have to put the commas. Cast shadow, what that does is, if you see right here, you have a shadow right here under the block. And if you don't want it to do that, you click that off, and it doesn't cast a shadow at all. So you would, some people would do that to like, some people would completely turn off cast shadows so they don't have to put very much lighting elements. Some people do that to make their game higher in performance. But I mostly see that done in like the clanning community. But excuse me, sorry. But as like a actual game developer, most game developers out there that like develop games, I don't usually see them turn off shadows because it adds a level of realism to your game. But I can see needing to turn some of the shadows off because I mean, you don't need everything to cast a shadow, especially if you have shadow map on, which I'll get to that later. But the next panel here is material. You click this down and you can select between brick, cobblestone, concrete, corroded metal, diamond plate, fabric, force field, glass. And glass, for it to take effect, you have to turn the transparency down, which is at the bottom of the appearance tab right here. And if your appearance tab is closed, you just click this arrow. You'd put like 0.5 for example, and then it gives you the glass texture. Like you can see the glass texture. But if you leave it at 0, it kind of just looks like a smooth plastic block, but with like a bit of a gloss to it. You can't see through it. It just has like the glass texture outside. If you want the full effect, you need to add like transparency, like 0.8, 0.5, something like that. And transparency goes on a scale from 0 to 1, 0 being absolute, what's the word? Absolutely opaque, and then 1 being the absolutely transparent, so invisible basically. So in between you do like 0.2, 0.3, or 0.154 or something like that. That's how you get in between different levels of transparency. But back to the materials, we have granite, grass, ice. I should probably put that back at 0. Marble, metal, neon, and neon won't take full effect unless you put a bright color, just like a bright teal or cyan, like right there. Um, then we have plastic, which is basically like smooth plastic. It's almost the exact same thing, but it has more of like a kind of a concrete texture or a wall plaster texture to it. So, excuse me, if you're making a fully smooth part, I would not choose that because it gives you this texture. Um, Here's the difference between it and smooth plastic. This has no texture whatsoever. That's also going to be the most optimized material because there's not much for the player to load. And different textures have different effects to them. Some of them have effects, some of them don't. Some of them just have the texture, but they also can be more demanding than others, which I'll go over here in a second. And another thing to note, if you want low-end computers to handle your game flawlessly, keep textures at a minimum. I personally build with mostly smooth plastic for that reason. A lot of people are like, why do you use so much smooth plastic? Kesky, why do you use so much smooth plastic for? And I'm like, well, if I don't build it in smooth plastic, then they have all these textures that people have to load in. And like those with the low end computer, their FPS drops below 60, and it becomes very noticeable, especially if it drops below 30, because their game starts to lag and um it like starts bugging out at some point. I used to have that issue all the time because I used to work with a low end laptop. It couldn't really handle Roblox very well, even on the lowest graphical setting. Um, it it would run at about 30 FPS on the lowest graphics, which is 1 on in game. And some people are like that. Some people don't have the computer to really run these games, but they still want to play. And the best thing you can do as a game developer is make the game as friendly to all computers as possible, but also make it appealing, which is something that is kind of hard to balance between the two because, on one aspect, you're taking away detail, but on the other, you're gaining higher optimization of your game, which is really important to have in a game, especially if you want multiple, like if you want a huge fan base of your game, you want a big variety of people to be able to play it. And that's why people also make their games Xbox friendly or mobile player friendly, which obviously requires more scripting and more adjustments to the game. It's harder to make a game all three of those, especially if you are a beginner developer of a game. I would obviously start out with PC only games because the scripting for each platform is going to be different than the other because of the controls that a person has. So back to the textures. We were at plastic, so sand. We got sand and slate, wood, and wood planks. In the future, some of these textures are going to be changed. It'll be in 2022, from what I heard from Roblox, on the Dev Forum. I will put the link for Dev Forum down below. But Dev Forum basically is where, um, if you were around in the older days of Roblox, Roblox used to have a forum page where you could go and ask questions or about like development, but not only just development, but like you could do trading there of limiteds, and you could discuss features for Roblox or whatever have you. There were different forms for it, and they completely got rid of that several years ago. I believe back in like 2013, 2014, roughly, approximately, maybe 2015 actually, around that time period. And but they did bring back the dev forum for developers, so people like such as myself could go and ask questions. But there's a catch. Not just anybody can go and ask questions. You have to meet the qualifications to ask questions. So you just have to hope and pray that somebody has the same question as you that can pose, that asks the question. So let's say you had a question on how to change um, part color or something. You type it here, and I hope that one of these tells you about these. Um, tells you the answer to your question. And to qualify to post, which I personally still don't have the perms to do, you have to um, meet a certain requirement in your stats. And you'll also have to go walk through a little tutorial too when you're first using it. But you have to read a certain amount of posts. You have to be on the website for a certain amount of time. I believe you have to visit it a certain amount of days too, and view multiple topics and all that. And after you've completed all of those requirements, I don't remember what the requirements are. I saw them somewhere, but I don't know where they're at. After you hit those requirements, they will allow you to post and reply to people, and that that'll help you more significantly. It's challenging because I've had a lot of like very unique questions to me, like questions that are specific to me, obviously, that aren't going to be more like global, that I had questions about and I couldn't really find it on developer forum. So if you need that kind of assistance, that the dev forum does not offer, I would recommend going to like Reddit, or there's also script helpers that will help with like scripts, but they will not like help you make the script. They will only help you with errors with your script. So keep that in mind. Um so yeah, these are some options to if you need somebody to go to for help. Um but at any rate, we have let me go to smooth plastic. We have reflectance, which makes your part shiny, glossy, and more metallic-y kind of look. As you can see, if you look at different angles, it has different reflectance and kind of almost acts like a mirror in a way, but not entirely. Um, it's also base 0 to 1. 0 meaning no reflectance whatsoever, 1 being absolutely 100% reflective, at least to Roblox standards. Um, Data I don't really know much about, so I can't tell you. Transform, this is going to be like the size, the position, orientation. So like let's say I scaled this up, you'll see its size here changes 424. So the middle is basically the height, at least on this part. It depends on what you're rescaling, obviously. Like you have X, Y, Z. So I'm scaling it along the Y axis, and that shows you the size, or you can change it there if you want something very, very specific. You can change it there. Position, that's where your part is located. And I think some of these also help if you were scripting. Again, I'm not a scripter, so I cannot tell you 100% on that. Origin position, I believe that's the position of the center of your part. And then origin orientation, I'm not 100% sure. I guess how it's, I don't know. I don't know on that one actually. I'm not gonna try to pretend to know. Um, but if you don't want these, like data for example, you don't want that open, just click the little arrow and it'll close it. And then transform pivot. Um, I'm not 100% sure what that does. I think that, okay, it looks like that moves the pivot, like the center, so that you can like rotate it around a certain spot on the part instead of the center. Like I moved it a little bit towards the edge there, and so it you can rotate it along that point there if you can see. Um, I don't use that, and you'll see why later on. Uh, but if you are going to use building tools, I can see that being beneficial for you. But it's going to be a lot more time consuming than what I'm about to show you. Behavior, anchored. You definitely want your parts anchored all the time, unless it is like a tool, for example, or if it is a humanoid figure, or like something that goes on a character, something that is a moving part, you cannot anchor. But if the part does not move, then you need to anchor it, or it's just gonna glitch out, it's gonna fly, it's gonna explode, it's gonna do a lot of crazy stuff. Um, and me, little old me, when I first was building on Roblox Studio, I didn't understand anchoring, so I would constantly leave my builds unanchored, and I'd be wondering, why is my ladder or whatever falling or exploding? And that was the reason. And um, that's why I explained it to you guys, because there's gonna be people out there that don't know that. Um, archivable. It says here determines whether or not an instance can be saved when the game closes. Attempts to save the game. Note this only applies to game that uses data, um, persistence, or save place sync. So I believe that is a scripting feature for like if you're building a tycoon, but I'm not 100% positive on that, because again, I don't script, but I believe that's what that is. Can collide. By default, it's gonna be true, and what that means is that a player can can't walk into it. If it's set to true, a player cannot walk into the part. So let me scale this up and test the game so I can show you what I mean. And let me duplicate this too. So this one here on the left is going to be set to true. The one on the right is going to be set to false. And it also means parts can collide into other parts. That is the other thing. Parts can collide to other parts. So if you're making a gun, for example, if you have it set to true, the gun will just ram into the wall, and sometimes can get stuck into the wall, causing the entire player to get stuck. So most people, they set the gun to can collide false, so that the weapon goes through the wall, causing little to no issues. But also, if you take the gun out, it will cause you to fling yourself. I've seen that happen. But here, I'm going to test my game. You can hit F5 or this little button up here, or you can go to the test tab. There's different options. So here we have our first block. This is set to true. I just run into it. I can't go through it. I can jump on it. And then here's our set to false. I can stand in it. I can't jump on it. I just go right through it. So that's what the difference is between the two. That's how you make a part walk throughable too. So that's what that does. Can touch. That's another scripting function, I believe. Um, that is something I believe we used for like if a player is to touch a button or something along those lines. But again, I'm not certain on that. There are, I think there's a Roblox what's the term? Like a resource page for scripting where it tells you like what certain functions do, but it doesn't teach you like how to script itself. It just explains functions. If I can find that, I will link that down below for those who are interested in learning to script. That'll at least get you something. Um, I wish I did know how to script, because I had so many ideas I wanted to do, but I couldn't do it because I can't script. But I've basically retired from Roblox, for those that don't know me, I don't really do much on Roblox other than maybe play once in a while. I now I'm just here giving tutorials. So um, anybody that's looking for a developer, retired. I am not doing developing for anybody other than myself. So please don't hit me up in my DMs saying, "Hey Husky, can you build this for my friend? Hey Husky, can you make uniforms? Hey Husky, can you make logos?" No, the answer is gonna be no. I don't have time for it. I only have time to do things for me, and I don't have the time to do other things for other people. I used to, not anymore. So I apologize. Uh, Back to the behavior. Collision group ID. That also has to do with scripting. Um, that I think has to do like that would be like needed if you're making a car. Cars have become very like more advanced to make on Roblox than it used to be, because used to you could build it without any scripts whatsoever. You just need the car seat from Advanced. But now you need a whole lot more to make a proper functional car, and even I don't know how to make one to today. If you asked me 2013, yeah, I could make you a car that works, but 2021, heck no. Massless. I think that means that makes your part weightless, basically. Um, so if you had it unanchored, it gives it like no weight. Or you can, I think, adjust the weight too. Let me read the description here. If true, the part will be massless. When welded to another part that is not massless, the part will still have a mass. Well, the part will still have mass like a normal part is. It is an assembly root part according to get root part. So yeah, I'm not 100%. Some I guess what I said kind of somewhat true. It's probably something that's more going to be used if you're scripting something. Um, but I'm pretty sure it'd be like used for like, I don't know, if you're making a car yet again. Custom physical properties. If you check that true, you can change the density, the elasticity weight, the friction, and the friction weight of your part. And, like, let's say you're making a bridge. You'd need, like, a rope bridge, for example. I highly don't recommend. Have you done it before? Sorry, I hit my mic. I've done it before, and it 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 does not work out very well because the rope itself, it like the if even if you adjust the physical properties, the uh the bridge, it'll function okay for a little bit, but then the rope starts glitching out and the parts start glitching out. Then your bridge, like, it stretches and snaps and explodes. I've had that happen so many times, and let's say you were to make a bridge, you would want to change the density and all that of your part to make it not do something like that. Um, that's the only scenario that I can think of off the top of my head, like situation you would do that for, like if you're using unanchored parts. I guess if you're making moving parts, you'd probably need that. But if you're just building a structure, you don't need that. Root priority, probably a scripting feature. And if you need to see these over again, what they do, you hover over the word, and it'll give you a little description. But root priority, that's another scripting feature thing there. Um, Shape, block, you can make into a ball, or you can make it into a cylinder. Um, But you can also do that, like if you click the down arrow on the home tab parts, you can make a sphere or you can make a cylinder or a wedge. So you don't really need to do it here. Assembly, I have no idea. Attributes are new to me. I have no idea. So, um, now let me talk about materials. So, um, I have I had struggled with optimization issues before in my game, and I learned a lot about like how to make your game optimized from various people. Um, oh, I should probably mention this first. So let's say you're running on a low end computer and or you're on a high end computer and you want to see more detail. To change your graphical settings in Studio, you go to Studio Settings, and if you need dark mode as well, you can stretch it out by getting this double-headed arrow, and um, you just go to the edge and you can drag it to make the window bigger. If you want dark mode, you go to Studio, and then you go down to General, which is the third tab here, and then to the bottom of General says Theme. You click Theme and you click Dark. I personally prefer Dark; it's a lot easier on the eyes. But if you want light, have at it. Um, Most of these settings I don't mess with too much, but like if you wanted to change your select color, hover color, and all that, this is where you change that at. I don't mess with that personally. Script editor, that is all the stuff that involves scripting. If you want to change colors of your scripts and all that, that's where you do this at. But I don't like to mess with this because I don't want to mess something up by accident. Um, Diagnostics, I don't know anything about. Network, I don't know anything about. Physics, I don't know much about either. But we go to the rendering tab and we have performance. I have mine at full max graphics personally, so I can see each and every little detail, each and every shadow. But if you are on a low end computer, like your computer cannot handle very much graphical intensity, I would recommend putting it at like a level 1, especially if it's really low. But if your computer can handle it, then I would put it at like medium. So here's what it looks like at 1 versus at a level 21. So here's 21. You can see all the shadows, lights, and all that. And then you put it. Sorry, I'm putting it over my other screen so you can see. Now, if you put it at level 1, it changes all of that. But it will run your studio nice and smooth. You can put it in the middle, like I don't know, level 12, if your computer can handle it, and you can still see that, but you're not going to see as much detail, especially in smooth terrain water. So I would mess around with that and hit that sweet spot for your computer that like it can handle it, but you can also see as much detail because then you can see what your game would look like at a full or as close to max level detail of like somebody using a high end computer. But you don't have to. That is your preference, obviously. But again, if you have a low end computer, I would recommend putting it at like a 1 or a low level so that it's not you want to run your CPU usage up to 100%, and that will cause your system to lag entirely, or if you have like low RAM or whatever. Um, Debug, I don't know anything about. Graphics mode, um, I believe is dependent on like your graphics card. I haven't messed with this. I just leave it automatic. I think it just automatically detects what your graphic card uses. So yeah, and then task scheduler, I don't know. A lot of these you probably just need to like look into online if you want to know what they do. I only know how to change colors and all that. I don't mess with it too much. Excuse me. And then you click close or save, and you might have to restart Studio depending. Um, you can also enable beta features, but keep in mind that if you do enable beta features, actually, I think to enable beta features, you first have to um. It's been a while since I've done this. I don't remember exactly, but there's an option that you can turn it on. Maybe they move stuff a lot. I think you have to enroll beta channel. Yeah, it might be just like that. You go to beta features and you can select and choose which features you want to try out. I like to use them all and try them out all. And if I have issues, I will um check them out. Like I know they are introducing a new union technology, and I tried that out. I had a lot of issues with it, so I had to turn it off. But obviously, it's in beta, so it means they have work to be done. But back to the textures. Um, you can change the textures here, or you can change them on the home tab up here on the edit. So we got brick, cobblestone, concrete, corroded metal, diamond plate, fabric, foil. Some of these textures are not going to be easy for you to see on like level 1 graphics, and I'll show you that in a minute. Grass, ice, marble, metal, neon, pebble, plastic, slate, sand, smooth, wood, wood plank. Did I miss force field somehow? I think I did. There we go. Okay, so one thing to know about force field, it likes to Z-fight. Z-fighting is this glitching effect that you see here. It likes to Z-fight with the ground. So if you have it up against something, always move it out a little bit more, and then bam, it's no longer Z-fighting. You don't want parts to Z-fight because it will drop a person's FPS, and it's more noticeable with the lower end computer you have. Um, but if you have a high end computer, it's not gonna be as noticeable. Now, with having 21 graphics on Studio, you can also see like the dimensions and the texture. So it seems like it's like popped out more, like it has more dimension, but it's actually just flat. Um, See, like here on the rust, it looks like there's rust sticking out, but it's actually really flat. Um, foil is one that users were not able to see for a while. Um, and most users can't because of the graphic settings. Most people run at a 5 roughly because that's what Roblox usually puts it at on automatically. Is about a 5. Um, See here, you put it at 1, and you don't see as much dimensions. You can't really see the force field effect too well. It just looks very flat here. The rest looks almost the same, but it's a little more flat. And same with the diamond plate. It's pretty flat. Doesn't have much dimension. Fabric looks the same, but here the foil, you can't see the foil whatsoever. Um, all these textures look pretty flat. And you put your settings on like the high, or let's say maybe even 12. I think 12 you can see most of these. Yeah, here's a 12. So you can see these in their dimension. Uh, and then settings I'm gonna put back on the 21. There you can see even more detail and the force field effect. This is what it would look like to somebody who's playing on 10. This is also good if you plan on doing photography shots of your work. But yeah, there's gonna be a difference in how like the materials look based on the graphics that you're running at. Um, so now let me explain to you guys um which one is more intensive for a user. So neon is one, and the reason why is because neon has a glow effect, which having an effect, it means it's going to produce more lag if you use too much of it. If you use just like a touch of neon, it's not gonna hurt nobody, especially if you spread it out. If you have a bunch of it clumped up in one area, it's gonna cause lag. Force field, because it also has effect, and there's more you can do with force fields, which I'll show you something pretty cool that you can do with those. Um, and then where's glass at? Did I somehow skip over glass? I think I did. Let me pull up a glass. So we have glass here. Let me put the transparency. Glass is another one that causes quite a bit of lag. So when you're building windows, I would recommend that if you're building in a wall, that you use one big piece and not multiple panels, and make it like slightly thinner than the wall so it's not gliding through your wall. So like let's say you're making a brick house or something. You take this, well, if I can copy it, you take this and bring up a wall, and you have like multiple windows, for example. So you have two windows here, and let's grab this piece of glass and fill it to the exact size. I'm building on one stud right now. See, it's fighting with the centerpiece. So what you would do is you would go to Model tab, and you have the studs increments here. You can push that down arrow, and it goes down by 0.2, or by down and up by 0.2. So you can put it at 0.2 studs and move it in on each side, and that way it gives you a thinner glass and also doesn't fight with the wall. This is more realistic to how windows are too, and that way that saves you from more lag. in your game. Because if you want to use like glass, force fields, and neon sparingly, and you want to spread it out. You can also make custom textures, but again, you want to use those sparingly. Same with decals. Even Roblox has mentioned this before, or at least their staff has. They tell you to spread it out, don't clump it together, and don't use a ton of it, because if you use a ton of it, for those who have a low-end computer, it's going to cause a lot of FPS issues. Foil, I don't really use foil. I don't really see the need to use foil personally, but I would say it probably is like kind of not as high as neon and glass, but I would say it's probably behind it based on all of this reflectance and all of the texture there. Um, Another medium one would be diamond plate, and I would say even more than these, but not by like a huge significant amount, would be slate because of its dimension, I guess its depth. This texture I've noticed, especially if you have it Z fighting. If you have it Z fighting like this, it causes a tremendous amount of FPS issues, especially with this texture. Excuse me. Um, this and grass actually. If you have it C fighting, it it has quite an effect on your FPS, especially if you have a lot of it. It also doesn't look very good, so I would avoid it. And if you're building like a ground, I would that is like not square or rectangle. I would try to do as much of the area you can with one part. Add multiple parts. You're better off having like a few extra parts than it fighting, both aesthetically, but not just aesthetically, but also optimization wise. From the research I've done, like my experiences, I tested it out by making multiple copies of a bunch of Z fighting parts with the same texture, and I've noticed if I take like you know concrete or slate, my bad slate, and I fight it to get like with itself, it lags more than if I were to just set two by side or four side by side, like with your frames. It's like not as laggy. So honestly, having a couple extra parts isn't going to hurt you. Another thing people do, but I would not go too crazy with it either because it can also be complicated, especially if you do complex of it. Like there's unions, and you can union stuff together, and it'll make this nice smooth part like this. But if you make a complex union, like multiple parts, and the more parts you try to fit and throw into a union, it will cause more lag. So if you're building with using unions, I would be careful about what you do. I would use it only when you really need to use it. I usually use it when I need to cut parts out. And even then, I try to kind of avoid it personally because I have had so many issues with it. Um, Especially issues with unions entirely disappearing. But Roblox is working to fix that based on what I've read. But what unions do is they allow you to cut out pieces from a part. So you make the part bigger than, like, wider than what you want to cut out. Because if I did this, if I lined it up, there are chances are you're gonna have this like thin line of a part that I've noticed. So you want to make it a little bit higher. I don't feel like putting it back on 2.2, so it's gonna be much bigger. Um, you click negate and it'll turn this red, and you select both of these. You can do that by hitting Control or Shift. and you have both of them, you click union. And you have this. See right here, I didn't extend it out, so now I have a thin piece of material here. So I'd have to separate this, extend it out, negate it, and then select it with this, and then union it again, and there we go. I have kind of an L shape here. Transform tool. I forgot about that tool, honestly. Transform, it's kind of like, I think it's more of like an all-in-one tool. It's kind of tricky to use, like to get used to, but it tells you what the angle you're turning a part at, for one. It tells you how much distance and each part is, like when you scale it, and you can move it, rotate it, scale it all at the same time, and you can also click and drag. So it's basically all of these tools right here combined into one tool. But it kind of gets some getting used to if this is what you're going to use. And I don't know if you can adjust. Well, maybe you adjust it here, I think. Um so I can like rotate it 1 degree. Well, I don't know. Let's see, can I scale by 1? No, I don't think you can adjust this doesn't use that, but these you can. So I scaled it, have it at 0.1. That allows you to move it very thin. You can even go 0.001, which gives you like very like hair like movement here. But I personally like to start with 1, and I build with 1. And if I need to do finer details or something smaller, I go down to 0.2, then I go down to 0.05. Yeah, 0.5, then 0.25, then 0.001, depending on what I'm doing. But I like to start big up with the bigger stuff, get like the rough build in, and then I start putting the details in. Sorry. This I guess allows you to move the pivot point of your part here. This is a new feature. I haven't really messed with it, so I apologize for not really knowing much about it. I would recommend just playing with it. I have not messed with the alignment tool, so I don't know what it does. That's, I think, a kind of new feature, but I don't think it's super new. We have this little create button. This allows you to create all types of attachments. You can make a rope. Like I mentioned earlier, I mentioned a rope bridge. Well, you just click that and you move it over here, and that connects these part via a rope. And let's move like this up here, and then move this part up a little bit so it's not like welded to the ground, and hit unanchor. And you can go to the test tab, click run or F8, and you see it dangles. And that's how you'd make something that dangles. It can bug out though, so you'd have to experiment with like the velocity, the mass, and all that for different effects on what you want it to do. But that's how you would. That's what a rope would do right there. You can make things dangle and all that. Well, I guess you could say these are different constraints. I said attachments, but they're like different constraints. A hinge. I haven't used a modern day hinge, so I don't know how to use this per se. Obviously, it gives you. I think it's similar to how they use it in the older style. And that's where you take Like, for example, let's say if you're building a car, they would they'd have like the platform of the car, and then they'd take a cylinder. This is how old cars were built in Roblox. They'd take a cylinder and they would put a hinge on the tire, and they would drag it to the car into the car so that it like spins the tire, so it moves the tire. So I think you're gonna have to do something similar to that, which I'm trying to show you here. I'm gonna pretend these are my axles to my car, or axes, or whatever you want to call them. Why is it doing this to me? I do not know. There. Okay, so let's move this so that it lines up with that. And you would normally have the tire unanchored, and you'd click the hinge, and you can snap it to the center of the parts, and it puts the hinge there. You'll see it right here under your parts, the hinge, even though it disappears. And I think you would do this. Let's run it and see if it works. It stayed attached, so that's a good sign, but it's not moving. So oh, there it goes. So yeah, I guess if it would move away, it would come back to place and go back to moving. This is usually used for like tires and spinning parts. This brings it back to place. I've never messed with this, but this is pretty interesting. I guess if it goes far away enough, it'll break off. But yeah, it's pretty interesting. Um, if you're interested in that stuff, I would recommend playing with them, looking into them. I don't know a whole lot about them because I don't use them too often. Um, if you open your studio, like for the first time, you might see these green spots. These are your constraint details. To turn that off, you just click this right here on the model tab. You click constraint details, and once the dark the selection's off, that'll go away. Excuse me. There's also show welds, draw on top. That's how you toggle these. Um, Spawn. This allows the player to spawn in place, and you can change the color of it, but that won't change the tame color. So, if you're gonna make a game where there's multiple spawns, or multiple teams, I should say, and you want them to be on an actual team and not just a spawn where anybody can just spawn there, you would go into properties. You turn neutral off, because neutral means they're not really a team and basically anybody can spawn there. Allow team change on touch is basically as it says. It'll change the team on touch. So like if you're on red team, you want to be blue team, you touch it and they would be on blue team. Force field duration, that changes how long the force field is up. If you want it to go 10 seconds, you'd put it on 10 seconds. That's the default. If you want it completely gone, you'd put it at 0. Team color. This is what you want for your actual team. So you would put team color navy blue if that's what you wanted, and then you'd have a team folder here. If there's not a team folder in your studio, I've had that happen. You would go to insert object on the model tab, and you double click team, and it should give you the teams folder once you do that. So now we have a team here, and if you have the team folder, you can just click this plus sign, and you can put team, and then you can change auto assignable. So what that means is, once a player enters the game, do you want this team to auto assign to them? So if you want, let's say you want a spectators team, and you just want people to automatically be on spectators and no other team, you would make that color, that team color, let's say gray. Let's say you have gray for spectators. You'd make spectators auto assignable, and then you would click false for any other team so that they're not auto assignable. So therefore, only people that join the game are on gray team and not like red or blue team. If you want people to come in and be like assigned like any team at random, put them all at auto assign. You can change the team name to like Smurf. You can change team color. You wanted to set the team color according to the spawn color. So you know how we assigned here team color navy blue. Not just the part color. Brick color and team color are not the same. Brick color just changes the color of the brick. It doesn't change the color of the team. So keep that in mind. You want to scroll down to where it has this team drop down, go to team color, navy blue. And then you go to teams, and you have your team, and you want team color to match up with that spawn color. And in this instance, it's navy blue. So that way, if you want somebody navy blue to spawn where this spawn is, you want that team color to be navy blue. And let's say you wanted somebody to spawn here on red team, you would have, well, that's just the brick color. You want to change it to maroon. Let's make it maroon. And I accidentally copy and pasted him somehow. Then you would change the name to like, I don't know, red, and change it to maroon. And that way maroon team spawns here and navy team spawns here. Navy blue. And that's how you do the spawns. Effects. This stuff this can lag your game, but especially if you do too many. But explosion, I haven't messed with that one. That's actually new to me. Fire, that obviously gives you a fire, so if you want to make a campfire that just keeps going, then that's what you would use. You can do point light. This gives you like a light, so you can see a glow coming from that. And you can modify the light brightness to like 10 or something. You can increase the range. They recently added this thing where it shows you the angle of the light and how far the light reaches. Like, to see, it shows you how far the light is going to reach. This is a new feature to Roblox, and the max that a light can reach is 60 range. And you could do as little as 1. So it's between 1 and 60 for range. You can enable shadows, so that means once the light hits a part, there's going to be shadows coming behind that part. And you can also change the color of the light. I don't normally install lights through this method of effects. I usually click a part and click this little plus sign, and I type light, and you have 3 different lights here. Surface light, that lights the surface of your part, and you can have it drop down. So like if you wanted to just make a whole room light up and you don't care too much about the light, you just want it to be seen, you could do surface light, and then you can edit its properties so that the whole roof of your house, for example, it lights up, it drops the light down into the room. Uh, Spotlight, it's basically a light, like basically a spotlight. It's like if you wanted to make a stage light, for example, you'd have a spotlight coming down and up from like trying to explain this. I'm sorry. It comes down at a certain way, and you can change the angle. See, it shows you the angle that it's at. I usually put 180. It's easier for me to control it. You can change the brightness. You can change what face it is, so like bottom, so it points downward. Excuse me, and you can change the range up to even 60. And so you can change like how you want your light to shine down. So you can change, that gives you a nice bright spotlight there. This gives you a more narrow spotlight. And then you have point light, which is more useful if you're making like little light, like a little, gives you just this little light here, and it's just all around it basically. It lights up the entire part, and you can change the brightness of it and the range, but it's going to be all around the part basically. Then we have smoke, which gives you the smoke cloud effect. And then we have trail, which I think you have to like script as well. So like I think that's what, like if you wanted to have like a trail behind your weapon, you would use this alongside a script. I don't know how to use it myself properly, so I would look that up if that's something you're interested in. A beam is kind of the same way. Well, actually, no. Beam is not the same way. Beam is more of a complicated thing. I'll explain in another video what beam does, but in simplicity terms, I guess you could say, is like you could put two parts and you could shoot a beam between, and this gives you like kind of a conveyor belt effect, and it like rolls a texture across, and you can use that for different things such as a waterfall. But yeah, I'll go more in detail in a later video. Sparkles. Uh, we already went over light. Particle emitter. This allows you. This you can change a lot. You can do a lot with this, honestly. You can make it look like it's snowing. You can make it look like it's raining. All that stuff. You would have to just mess with all of these. I can go in more detail in a different video. But for the sake of this video, it's already gone for quite a while. I'm not going to explain in this video because there's more to go over. Test. So, you can do a multiple server test. I use mine on 2 because usually I don't need more than 2. So let's say you want to test something out, like a gun. Let's say you're making a gun and you want to test it out. You get this security thing and allow access. So this goes hand in hand with the FE update I was talking about. So with the filtering enabled update, it basically means you have a server-wide view, which means you have this where the whole server sees something. So like you can script something where everybody in the server can see what is going on. Like, let's say you're making a gun, you want the raycast to be seen by everybody in the server. So you would make the raycast of your gun server wide. And if, let's say, I have player 1 and player 2 shooting at each other, this server right here, I'm on the server view. It even says here, top left, server. And it has this green outline. That's how you know you're on the server view. So you'd see server player 1 and player 2 shooting at each other. You'd see a raycast. Now, if it wasn't server wide and it was just client based means you as a player, only you yourself sees this beam if it was scripted as client. So you could be shooting this player, you see the beams, but this player isn't going to see your beam that you're shooting at him. And it will not, this server itself will not see it either. So only player 1 here would see your beam being shot at player 2. That is the difference between server and client views, and why, and it's very important when it comes to scripting and what you want your object that you're scripting to do. If you want the full server to see it at the same time, such as a gun ray, you're going to want to script it on the server-wide view where everybody can see it. Now, let's say you just want something that the player themselves see, then you would script it to just client view, basically, for the player. So only the player in their own game, they see it, but the people around them will not see that. So, this is the server view. We're going to move that to my left screen. We have player 1 and player 2. Sometimes they have it labeled. Here we go. Player 1, player 2. So you can play as this player, and you can toggle to this player, and you can move them around. So, like, let's pretend I have a gun here. I'm shooting at player 2, and let's say you had two displays like I do. It's very useful if you're building. You'd shoot player here, and you have your server on your left here, or your right, wherever you prefer. Or you could dual window it, which would you hit Windows left arrow key, and you'd have your player over here. So let's say you're shooting your player here, you move your server onto them so you could see what happens server-wide, and this would be client view right here. And then you click cleanup. I would only recommend doing that if your computer can handle it because you're running multiple game sessions at once. So it's going to be a lot more demand for your computer. And you can run up to even 8 players, which I would only recommend if you really absolutely have to and your computer can handle it. Honestly, most times you can get away with just 2. And obviously the best test is going to be a test with friends because you can have more variables that could happen. Like somebody could die with the gun, and if something could happen that caused break it, or there's so many effects that can happen, and it's like with one object in different scenarios. And if you're doing it, testing it on a server test, local server test, or whatever, you're not going to be able to test all those variables that could affect an object. But it is good to sit for testing out, making sure it works in the first place. You can also do mobile view, so you can see what the world looks like through a phone. You can toggle it here too. You have the view button. A lot of you, if you just first open Studio, you're gonna have this, which allows you to change the way you're looking at the world, basically. And a lot of people hate having that. And to turn that off is you click View Selector. You can show a grid, which if you choose this base plate, it already has this grid. You can show grid material. I think this is what this basically is. Wireframe rendering. I've not used this before. I actually didn't know this is a feature. It might be newer, but this is the wireframes. How it look. You can turn that off. You can full screen, or you can hit F11. It'll change it. Output. This is gonna be your script detail. So like, I can at least show you a basic script. So let's say, oh my bad. I'm searching. This is how you search for something, by the way. So like, if you want terrain, you type that. But anyway, let's put in a script, and you can see print hello world, print 1+1 or something. You'd put quotations, and it will say like 1+1. It'll print it down here. So like, we run it, and it's gonna say hello world and 1+1. This gives you the output of like the feedback of your script, basically. Script analysis. This tells you the errors that are being stated by your script. Command bar. This allows you to run one line of code. Watch. I haven't really messed with this. Some of these I've not messed with, like performance task scheduler. But some of this is script stuff. It's more advanced for me. Find, replace all. This allows you to find a line in your script, and you can replace everything within that line with something else. Like, let's say you wanted to change Bob into Jerry, you could just find Bob and replace it with Jerry. Terrain editor. This brings up your terrain tools. You don't need to go to the view tab for that though. Script recovery. I don't know. Team create. Now, team create allows you to work on a game with multiple people. And so you'd have to publish it, and you have to be friends with the person. But it basically creates an online session that allows multiple people to come into your game and work on it with you. And the game will automatically save as you guys go along. And you even have a team create chat where you guys can talk amongst each other in the studio and work on a project. So that's how you do that. You can record video. I have no need for that though, personally. Plugins. These are very useful. I personally love to use F3X. F3X is the building tool that I use. F3X it's a building tool, or a set of building tools rather. And so if you want to use like plugins such as F3X, you'd open Toolbox, and you have the marketplace where you can go and select, like, use people's models, like a realistic tree, for example. If you wanted a realistic tree, you come over here and you search tree, or it might show up automatically, like I did with me. You can get images, meshes. These are all like user generated items that people have made for and allowed you to use. And I guess you have in-game videos. This is something new. I haven't messed with them, so I don't know a whole lot about them. And then we have plugins. So load character is one I recommend if you just saves a little bit of time for you to like generate your character. Let's say you want to bring in your character or a friend's character. You'd use this plugin, spawn R6 or R5, whichever you want, and you have a copy of your character. If you just want to only make a copy of your character and your character alone, the long way to do it is you would click play. You'd spawn yourself in the game, you'd click down the workspace, you find your character, copy it, you stop the game, and you control V and you paste them in the game and you have a copy yourself, just like that. But load character, it's faster and it allows you to also bring in your friends. So I could bring in my friend Private154 into the game and have him here too if I needed him. Realism mod, this allows you to it helps you make your game a bit more real. You can install, like, I have it installed right here. You can install blood. You can install fall damage, first person, dynamic lighting. And to install them, you click and you drag. And you can also put day and night cycle. This saves you from having to script these. You can do ragdoll, so when you kill somebody, they ragdoll. You can even have a sprint feature, realistic head movement. That's new to this, actually. Hide player's name, first person, disable reset button. It saves you from having to script those, and so they already adds it in there. So it gives you this automatic cycle. You can sprint, and it gives you all of this stuff that for your game. You can use a waterfall generator if you want a realistic waterfall. It'll save you time making waterfall, and you can adjust it and all of that. So if you want a waterfall, that's what I would recommend getting if you want to make one. So you can have a waterfall right here. You just click it. You click a part or wherever you want it to spawn, and then click it here, and you can change the speed, transparency, softness, all of that. You can adjust how you would want the waterfall to look and flow. Building tools by F3X. And you also have to be careful to make sure to install these by the correct creator. Building tools by F3X is by Gigs D4X. Not all plugins are free anymore. It used to be plugins were always free. Some of them you have to pay for. Building tools by F3X is very useful, and I'll get into how to use those here soon. Part to terrain. So I don't use this anymore personally, but let's say I'm going to install it just so I can show you. Let's say I wanted to turn this part right here into terrain. I would click this, and it gives me this window here. Oh, not sure what that's all about. I guess I accidentally. Okay, I guess you open it first. My bad. So you open it and you select this, and it turns the part into terrain. So you could turn even the whole base plate into terrain, and you can choose the different materials as well. But I don't want my parts into terrain right now. But that's what you would use, and if you don't want it anymore, like if you want to remove it, you would go to manage plugins, and you can also update them here too. You go to the one you want to uninstall, you just click the three dots, uninstall. 3D text, this allows you to generate block text, so you can put this, see sample text, and this is good for creating signs and such. And you go here, you type Husky154, my username, and you can change its color here and all, and you can create a sign. And that will save you a lot of time, and it's nice and clean. Sure, you can build it, but this is honestly far much easier, and you can change the font and all that. It's very handy if that's something that you're going to use, that is. Gap fill, very useful when you're building. So gap fill, let's say you have this. Oh, you can also do Control R for rotating. And if you use F3X, you do Shift C and it'll copy in place and paste it in place. So here you can obviously put a wedge and fill that in. But let's say you have something like this. You could, honestly, in theory, you could do this. And try and, fit that in there. But to save time, you could also, well, not just save time, but if you want it to be exact too, you could just do that. You click two parts and you'd fill it in. I'm gonna go more in depth with gap fill, like probably in the next video. Or I might split this video into multiple parts because this is a long video. Tree generator basically allows you to generate a tree if you don't want to build a tree, but it's only gonna give you a certain style of tree. Model resize, so like if you're building weapons, you never want to build a weapon small because that is going to be incredibly hard for you to do. Trust me, I've made multiple weapons. You want to build them big, nice and big. Make sure to build them in proportion to the scale you're building. And then once you're finished with it, you would scale it down to fit into a player's hands. That way it's much easier for you to build, but also you can only get so small when you're building normally. So, if you're building a gun, there's going to be parts that are going to be so tiny that you can't even build to that size. So, in the long run, you want to build in a big scale. Or you could 3D model it in Blender if you're able to do something like that. You would make it in Blender and you could just use a mesh. Weather systems, I think that's supposed to give you like rain and stuff in your game. But I don't know if it works. Rope Master allows you is no longer maintained. Never mind. Tool grip editor is another very useful one. This allows you. This is something you need if you're making weapons or tools. It changes the position of a tool handle, and I'll show that in a different video on in depth on how to use that. But that is the basics of what that does. Import building. This is for F3X. So let's say you went to a game and you built a building in a game, such as like whimsical building, for example. Let's say you're building a whimsical building. You built something beautiful. You love it. You want to bring it with you to studio. You'd select it all and you would export it in whimsical building with F3X. And then you would install this plugin into Studio, and you can import. You also get a code. Remember that. You want to save your code. You take the code and you enter the code and import your build into your game. Stirvent Model Reflect. This allows you to mirror a model. This is very handy if you're wanting to build something symmetrical and you just want to build half of it. Or if you're doing like a map and you want a mirrored map, that would be beneficial to you. If you want to do learning, like classes, there is Studio Plus, which is this right here. CK Studio Plus. This is actually one of the most useful plugins I have found because it gives you a step-by-step tutorial on how to do different things in Roblox, such as building, scripting, this is a good starter for you if you're learning it to game develop to use. And it gives you, it's like an online class session in Studio, and they even give you videos. And last I checked, it's free. I hope it's still free because it's a very useful tool. It likes to open automatically every time you open Studio, but you can go through this course and learn all these different things through these courses, and it even like loads up scenarios in your game and all of that stuff for you to work with. It is a really useful and handy tool to have if you're learning. So if you're wanting to learn stuff, I would highly recommend CK Plus Studio or CK Studio Plus because they go with you step by step, it's like an online class, honestly, and Studio. And they also even give you videos on how to do it. They work with you at a good pace. But obviously, they only teach you so much, and I'm here to teach you guys more of Studio itself and how to build and all that, and go more in depth into Studio. I would recommend it, especially if you're scripting. That's where I started to learn some scripting, but I've only went so far into it because I only had so much time. Um, there's um, there's a Roblox animation editor or animations thing. I don't know if that comes installed or not anymore. I think it might, but it allows you to animate stuff, and I'm gonna do a whole separate video on that. I'll do a whole separate video on how to build a gun. So I'll go over animations and all that. I won't show you how to script a gun, but I will show you how to build it, how to get it working, all that stuff. Um, and so that you have it ready. I can't script as I said, so I will be using a script to get working so I can show you guys. So I'll go in depth on how to animate a weapon, how to uh change the handle position and all of that stuff. With that. Another thing is terrain editor. So this allows you to do smooth terrain. So you can change plane lock, you can ignore water or not ignore not water, ignore parts or not ignore parts. It basically does what it says it does. You can do auto material, which I believe would just like do random stuff, I guess. I don't know. On the ad at least. You, so basically you can, I don't know why it's doing that, but basically it allows you to paint terrain. Um if you just wanted like a cube, generate a cube of terrain, or you could even generate a whole like landscape if you're gonna generate. And you can choose what you want, like water, marsh, canyons. I'm gonna select them all honestly, so you can see it all. And you can add caves, remove caves, change the size, uh, and bloom size to seed, and you can generate. It'll generate it. I'm gonna wait for that to generate so you guys can see it. Well, let me make it higher. It's too low, so it generated like below the base plate. Alright, let's try that again. This is especially useful if you are not good at building landscapes. And so you can generate different depths, different biomes and all that. And you can change the generation too. You can delete it. Not exactly sure what bloom size does, but you can obviously change all of the seeds and such. I personally like to build mine from scratch because I always have something specific in mind, but you do whichever you feel like doing. If you want to do a cube of terrain, like let's say you just want to build a slab of grass, you'll go to the region and then the select, and you can scale this, and then you go, oh my bad, and then you go to fill, and you pick the material. I'm gonna pick grass, and you have grass. So you notice the grass have blades of grass. If you do want it or you don't want it, you go to workspace and explore, click terrain, and then decoration. You can turn it on and off. I personally love having the grass, so I keep it on. If you want to change material colors, you go still on terrain. You click material, and you can change any of these materials. So we have grass, and let's say we want blue grass. Well, there we go. We changed it to blue. Um, and you can go to the create tool, or no, edit tool, and you can add, ice, and you can also change the strength and size of the tool you want to use for finer details or more rough sketching. Add water. Ignore parts is a new thing. It might be a beta feature even. Beta feature. So if that's something you want, you'd have to turn beta on. You can grow terrain, and you can change the strength and the size. Don't go too big with your tool though, because I've noticed it can really lag your game or your studio. My bad. You can smooth terrain, so you can smooth it out. It'll also kind of erode it some. You can erode it, make canyons or whatever. You can paint. So basically, you can change existing terrain. So like, let's say we want this to be a mountain. We could do basalt, or I could do a dirt hill or slate or something, and we can paint the existing terrain to be like this if we want it to be like that. You can also flatten terrain to a certain level. You got 3 different brushes: cube, circle, and cylinder. So like, let's say you want your terrain at a certain height, you use flatten, and you can smooth it or flatten it out to a certain height. And um you just drag it over like that, basically like this, and you can change the size of your tool, and the strength of the tool. So if you want less potent, you would do that. You can change the different flattening modes, and ignore water or not ignore water, all that stuff. I would just play with these, experiment with them, can get all kinds of cool effects with smooth terrain if you're going to use it. If you want it to be realistic, you just play with it. They plan on adding new materials for smooth terrain, but that won't be released until 2022 from what I've read. Um, so yeah, that's smooth terrain. So I'm gonna show you guys with F3X about F3X, I should say, and then that will be the conclusion of this video because this video is probably going on for 2.5 hours, and I'm starting to lose my voice. So change to different tools just with the press of letter, and that makes building faster. So you don't use control when you copy and paste. Okay, so the controls would be Shift C, that would copy and paste, and it works basically like duplicate on Studio. And you hit Control R or Control T, you can rotate just like that. There's a snapping feature, so you'd hold a R on your keyboard, you get a pink X, and you hover over. So you can just grab that, drag it with your mouse while holding R down. You want this pink X, and you drag it to wherever you want it to snap. And you don't have to just use it on moving. You can rescale it that way. On so Z is your move tool. X is your scale tool, and you can only snap to corners when you scale, but it's still it that's all you really need, honestly. C is your rotate tool, and you don't have to hold it down with the rotate tool, but I have noticed that you need to hold it down with the move tool and the select tool to like drag it. But with the rotate, you don't have to. You just click R. You have this pink X. You move it around to wherever, and it'll move your rotate tool to where the center of that place you clicked is, and you can rotate along that axis. And this makes things very, very, very handy. Local, I don't quite know, but then center is the center of the part you selected. Last is going to be where you snapped. So yeah, and then Z, your move tool. You have global, which is the standard movement. Local, I don't see the point of this. It just moves it like this. Or if you select multiple parts, it kind of looks like you exploded everything. I don't know what the point of this is. So last is very helpful if you're building on an angle. So let's say we take this, we rotate it, and scaled it out, and we want to build detail on this wall. So we take this, and if let's say you want to snap to this angle, by the way, you go to Home tab, select, and you drag it to this, and it'll snap the part to the wall. And then you go back to the F3X, and you can snap this corner down to the bottom corner here by holding R and left click on your mouse, drag it down to that corner, and then you can scale it down, and then you can Shift C, copy and paste at the same time. And if you have it on last, you can move it along this wall. Whereas if you have it on global, it's a standard movement, so you can't exactly move it the same way. Whereas last, you can move it along this wall. So that's another useful feature to have. So I could just easily build the detail on a diagonal without a problem. You can also increase increment size here to whatever you want. So like 0.25 if you wanted, you'd move it by 2.5 studs, 1 stud. You could even move it by 100 studs, 1,000 studs. But of course, if you're gonna move it that big, you'd have to have that much space to move it. So 1,000 is going to be a bit too much, but you could do 100. So you just move it 100 that way. You can also change the exact position right here if you needed to. Which would be XYZ positioning right there. You can do the same here, XYZ size on the move tool. And you can change the increment to like 0.2, and you can move it like by just 0.2. And if you need to undo, hit Control Z. You can do Shift X to delete, or basically cut rather. So then if you cut it, you can still paste it into game, but it also deletes it. You can also, another nice thing about this, if you want to scale something in both directions, you click the both and you can move it, scale it both this way, the width way and height way. That also saves you a lot of time. You can, if you want like to keep a consistent angle, you could do this. You could put like 45. You might need to sometimes put negative 45. So we have negative 45, then 45. You can change the increment in which you rotate at. One being smallest. So you have very fine movement. Then you have V, which is your paint bucket. This is going to be the old paint palette. But if you want to use these colors, you can just select the color you want, and you can just click the parts you want to change color. I don't use this too often, honestly. I prefer to use the Explorer, but it's whatever your preference is. B is the surface tool. You can obviously come over here and click them, but it's much faster if you use your keyboard. Get some used to getting used to, but once you get used to it, you'll work much faster, and you can be much more precise with F3X. But obviously, it's going to be up to you what you prefer, what your preferences are. But if you want a nice clean build and build much faster, I would highly recommend getting used to F3X. It's a time saver. It's a lifesaver to me. But it's ultimately up to you, obviously. So surface tool, it allows you can select like a surface like the top, and you can change it to like a hinge, which is like the old style hinge. You can add studs, but if you have a texture, it's not going to show the studs. Same with inlet, weld. You're not going to see these unless you turn this onto this material into plastic. I somehow grouped these. You can quickly group things by hitting Control G, and to ungroup things quickly, you hit Control U to ungroup it real quick. I have a bad habit of accidentally grouping things. I do not know why. But let's put this on plastic. Not smooth plastic. It has to be on plastic for these to show. Where is it? Oh, here it goes. Top. Okay, so we could do top, and then we can change it to like studs, inlet. So kind of like the back side of a Lego, top side of a Lego, but it's not quite Lego. um, Actually, Roblox had in the past looked more a lot like Legos, and they had issues with Legos. So, I don't think they like to be compared to Lego. You have weld, hinge, motor, which is basically it motorizes like movement. This is the old motor. So like if I add a part here that's unanchored, it'll spin that part on there. So You have to have the move tool selected, by the way, to move stuff. You can't drag with the select tool or the rotate tool, I don't think, for that matter. So let's move this up and snap this to here and unanchor. I think that'll work. Hit F8 to run. No, I think it's 2 on there actually. I might have welded them together by accident. Oh, another thing about After X is it automatically anchors its parts if you use the parts through F3X basically. I think you have to move it about that much. Maybe it doesn't work anymore. I don't know. Let me try one more time. It probably doesn't work anymore. It's probably obsolete. If that tool is necessarily, but I could be mistaken. See, we have the material tool, so you can change. So if you don't want to go to Explorer back and forth to Explorer to change the material, you can go over here, change the material, transparency, reflectancy, all that right here. And then unanchored, anchored. Collision tool, so you can set true to false here instead of going through Explorer. J allows you to add a new part. It spawns wherever you click it, and you can do normal, you can do truss, and if you're using basic building tools, you'd go to model, insert object, and then you type truss, and you get a truss part. You also get mesh parts there. You can do J wedge, J corner. This is useful. You can also get this from advanced too, though. But this saves you a lot of time. I don't know why Roblox makes you go all the way to advanced to get these parts. I don't know why they don't put this in the part drop down. But yeah, you can get a cylinder. You can get a ball, which is a sphere. You can get a seat. This is just a standard seat for like a chair, a vehicle seat for like a car, and you can get a spawn. But I would recommend go up here to the model tab and getting that, because I don't think the F3X one is up to date on that. H is to add a mesh. Wherever that goes, I don't know. Supposed to be able to add a mesh. I don't know. I haven't really used it. Texture tool, so you G is a texture tool, so you can put your own texture in. You'd have to add decals, or the actual way, you'd basically you click the part and you click this plus sign. You have texture, and you have over here on the side. You would go and add or click the texture, and you have to put in a picture or an ID. So let me grab a decal if it loads. And okay, I'm not gonna bother trying to scroll all the way down. Let's just grab this random picture of train carts, and we could just put that there, and we can move it amongst any part, and it will basically continuously put like the decal, and you can adjust it to whatever you want it to be. So you can make your own textures that way. You'd have to put multiple of these. I would just put texture on the sides that are visible, not the entire part, because you're adding more texture, which is going to cause lag. Just put it to the sides that are going to be visible. And then you have the weld. This is to weld unanchored parts together. U allows you to add lights quickly, and P is allowed to allow you to put smoke, fire, and sparkles. And you can do the undo button here if you don't like using Control Z for whatever reason. And yeah, that's basically the quick rundown of F3X. But again, to snap, you'd for the move tool, you'd hold R down. You get pink X. You hover over wherever you want to click and drag to snap to. So, like if you want to snap corners to corners, you click the corner, drag it to the corner, and it'll snap it together. If you want to scale, you hold down R, click the corner, drag it to the corner that you want to scale it to. You drag it to where you want it to go, and then this to rotate tool, you just hit R, click it wherever you want to rotate it, and you can rotate it wherever. Alright, that's it for this video. I'll see you guys in the next video, and I'll go more in depth as I go along with these tutorials. I hope I helped you guys out and got you guys to be more familiar with Roblox Studio. Leave a comment down below if there's any questions, or if there's anything you want me to do a tutorial about specifically. And if this helped you, please leave a like so that I know that this video was helpful.